Well, today I'm thrilled to have on Tony Lamb from Dicker Data. And interestingly enough, I'm going to be honest and upfront, Tony and I haven't been connected for all that long. And I noticed, as you do in LinkedIn, someone shares something of note and what have you, and we'll get into it later, but Tony's updates via video and podcasting and all this sort of stuff is simply sensational, but we'll get to that later. Tony, thanks for coming on. As I said, you're from Dicker Data, so tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Dicker Data.
Absolutely, mate. Before I start, the question was the content or the ute that you like the most about my content?
Well, it was probably the ute because I have exactly the same model.
I love it. I've only had that car for about 6 weeks, and it's true. I barely leave the vehicle. I love it. I've been camping in it.
So good,
I do all sorts of things. I drove down a Marimbula and Wilson's Promontory, and it was amazing. But enough of my social stuff.
Awesome.
Mate, it's Tony Lamb. I'm over here. I'm a business manager in the software division, and I look after portfolio products. Been doing it for about 10 years in various roles at Express Data and Dicker Data. I was the cloud lead at some stage for Microsoft. Helped them get the CSP, Microsoft CSP into Dicker Data a while ago. Helped build that business, and now just making sure partners understand how we can help them grow, help them in times of need or difficulty, and just making sure that you absorb a lot of this new tech or new messaging in markets. So
yeah,
always there to help partners, always evangelizing products or what's happening. I mean, we talk about AI a lot these days, but before it was cloud, before AI, and then it's cyber, and then it's all these lovely things. And IT is one of those things where everything cycles. You know what I mean?
I often say, mate, everything old is new again. It sort of goes in these weird cycles.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. You've been at Dicker for coming up 10 years or
10 years. Long service leave in the middle of the year, mate. I like the furniture.
Tell us about Dicker Data, because our show goes out to a lot of clients and potential clients and people in the industry, and people say Dicker Data. What the hell is Dicker Data? Obviously, started by a founder. It's a phenomenal company. I mean, we've been dealing with Dicker for what feels like a lifetime. A hugely successful company. For those interested in investing, look up the growth journey because it's been somewhat short of phenomenal.
Yep.
Tell us about Dicker Data, because I don't think the people outside this industry would go, Dicker, what? Who?
Yeah, look, it depends on the perspective, right? Dicker Data is an Australian-owned company. I mean, we're publicly listed, but it's in Australia. All our support's in Kurnell. So if you ever get the chance to go down there, it's a big warehouse. Yeah. We've got a lot of people in there. And it was recently made even bigger because of our scale. What is Dicker Data? Well, obviously, we're a distribution company, right? We move a lot of PCs, laptops, servers, infrastructure, but we also move a lot of software, so cloud, backup software, cyber security software, and things of that nature. But I like to think of us as more of a channel company that helps partners understand what tech is. I think if you take that from a perspective of what we do, that's ultimately what we do. We just happen to move it really well, and we happen to enable really well, but we're trying to get partners to understand what tech is to absorb so they can actually bring that message to market, to evangelize to end customers who may not even know what they need. And we constantly do that continuously. And I think that's what we do. I mean, there's variations of that. People go, oh, we move boxes. Yeah, we do that. Great. We've been doing that forever. But ultimately, it's mobilizing the channel to understand what tech means to them. And it doesn't matter where they are in the journey. We're there to help them.
Yeah. Just to talk, I understand that, as you say, you've been moving boxes for a long time. I'm constantly amazed. We do a lot of data, a lot of hardware for our customers, and it is something that Dicker has done for a long period of time extremely well. We order hardware for clients often in very short time frames, and it's a well-oiled machine. But of course, it's not just hardware; it's software. And I suppose that's one of the things that I want to talk to you today about. Is bringing you on in terms of some of the things that you go through in terms of you look after. But I mean, talk to us about the depth and width of the vendors that Dicker Data has exploded. It's insane. I mean, just talk to some of the verticals, not necessarily organisations, but just to give people an idea.
It's quite interesting. I'll start with one of my bugbears. my bugbears, and I'll tell you, I said we move boxes really well, and everyone goes, but you're not known for, your cyber. I'm like, do you know that we've been selling RSA for over 20 years? The little fob keys and stuff for a long time. So we've been helping people with cyber, we've been helping with their cloud platforms and things of that nature. So just because we don't evangelize that we do things great, because I like to call us the Johnny Walker of IT, the man behind the bar. You never get to see us, but we're there constantly just helping out and doing that. So back to your question. Look, it's really, how long's a piece of string? Like, what vendors we take care of and what is the portfolios, but it just depends on what's new and fresh. I think we have our staple of hardware. We've got our Dells, our Lenovo's, our Cisco's, Samsungs, all those lovely things, but we also have a massive software portfolio, Microsoft being one of them, Commvault, Veeam, all those backup and cyber resilience, cybersecurity. So we hit almost every vertical. There's not any industry we don't hit through a partner's perspective. So from answering that question, it's such a difficult question to answer.
Yeah. I wanted to give people an idea of how wide it is.
Oh, mate. I mean,
and it's massive.
It's massive. I mean, from humble beginnings to what we're scheduled to make, like 3.3 billion or something this year. So it's a massive Australian company. It's but the scale,
and haven't lost touch of, in terms of organisation to partner.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of support on that,
Correct.
which we've noticed. So there's high touch point if we need support. I mean, we as an organisation, we like if we're going down and saying we're selling a piece of hardware or an OEM or a software provider, as an organisation, we like to get in deep and know the product. But if there's times when we need something, there's a whole depth of experience within Dicker Data, isn't there? And something else I want to touch on too is that, and something that people can relate to if they're a client of ours is, for example, we do a lot of HP and HPE in terms of servers. We know the product very, very well. We do all the others, of course, but if we need something, there's actually, with some of those larger people, you and I actually don't know how it works, but you, for example, have HP and HPE people within your business working in your business, but they're almost like exclusive to those brands. Talk us through that.
Correct. So if you think about, we have different business units. So we'll have the software business unit, we'll have the HP business unit, which is HPE, we've got the Cisco, Lenovo, and they sort of don't cross. So if you're part of that division, you take care of that brand if it's big enough.
Right.
And then we have BDMs and salespeople and vendor alliance and product managers that sort of manage that brand or that portfolio to make sure that you're successful. So you talked about HPE, Ishan over there, he manages that team. And he's got pre-sales people. If you need that, they'll drag those through. They'll have BDMs, but they'll also have enablement people and motions so that you would understand, what's the flavor of the month, or if you wanted to build this, they could come in and help you as well. So that's sort of how we function, like at a global level. But I'm a business manager inside a software business, and I have brands that I take care of. So we're almost like a business inside a business as well. So a lot of those things allow us to create motions and help partners more. So as much as we're part of the same business unit, we might compete, but our main goal is to make sure you're successful in the brands you want to carry. And that's built across the whole business as well. So that's super exciting to see when you go through the office, which I was there the beginning of this week, just to see all those business units, almost how do you help? And I've been there long enough to know everyone. What are you doing this month? And it's there's a marketing person, they're doing some marketing. I'm talking to this customer. I'm trying to build this infrastructure. It's just really exciting to see an organization like us, which is massively high touch. But our main thing, and Vlad says, it's about our people servicing the channel. And I think that's very apparent. I think you're touching on that, Tom.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll get to the particular areas that you work with. But one of the things that we've been focused on, or myself in particular, and I think as an industry, I'll probably be a little bit negative on maybe the industry for a moment. But I think there's this sort of thing out there that we need to protrude to our customers and to the market, that we know everything about everything. it's not possible. Technology is a million miles wide. We can't be. So I mean, we know a lot about the vendors that we sell and what we focus in, but there comes a time when we're bringing on a really large customer at the moment, and there's some skill sets and product knowledge that we just don't know. So that's where I often refer to it as the circle of competence. So we've got our circle of competence that is really strong, and we solidify that, and we try and grow that. But outside that ring, we've got trusted partners, which Dicker is one of those, and we lean upon those when we need them. For example, so we're about to support a large OEM that we're not used to, and we're leaning on Dicker. So that's marvelous. Talk us through what you're currently doing at Dicker and what you're looking after, Tony.
So I look after 3 brands in Australia at the moment. I look after Cloudflare, which is internet security. Everyone knows it. If you've not seen the Cloudflare where you go click here if you're not a robot, or test it, it's everywhere, and that's a very small part of it. You'd see that. And then I look after Nutanix, Hyper-Converged infrastructure, and also RSA as well. So if you remember back in the day, the little fobs that you carried around that jump around that makes you secure, that everyone should be using, word of advice, should be using, absolutely. No matter what flavor, whether it's RSA or not, should be using for security. That's sort of the portfolios I look after. But it's quite interesting because we make sure that we not only look after them, but we make sure it's successful. We do the marketing, make sure it's enabled, make sure there's lead generation for the partners to the end customers. And it's interesting you say that what you just touched on, and I was thinking, how do I make sense of that when you're saying you don't know everything? But I see that you guys have partners in particular, and yourself being one of them. You translate what the requirements are from the customer, right? And you get those requirements. And our job is to understand what is available from the vendor space, and we sort of translate that into a solution. Do you know what I mean? We as distributors never,
good way to put it,
never sort of go after the end customer. You translate that, and we translate what the vendors want, and then we meet in the middle, meet in the channel. I think that's probably more of a, and then we create a solution.
Spot
on. So I do that.
Talk us to about a solution. Yeah. Okay. So talk to us, because people would know. So I'll just touch on and explain, the RSA token, and it's probably agnostic from RSA, but and this is having a real resurgence because we're seeing a lot of security and identity. One of the biggest parts of security. I mean, if I was to go and speak to the average customer and client, and which we do, their first thought in regards to security is securing the end device and the cyber antivirus, and it's moved on from that, but that's fair enough. But really the major thing is securing your identity, what we refer to as the identity. And this is having a real resurgence, Tony, isn't it, in terms of, and rightly so, the level of attack on people's identity in terms of gaining access to their Microsoft environment, to the environment of the organisation. It's where all the money is from an attack perspective. You can hold the keys to the castle from an attack perspective and a dollars perspective. So talk to us in regards to, and I'd imagine, I'm sort of presuming, but the RSA line of the business is having a resurgence. Would that be a fair assumption?
It is, and it's sort of morphed a little bit. And I think you touch on a really good subject. The identity is key, but everyone's attacking the user. So now they're trying to socially engineer the user to bypass a lot of these tech we put in to detect. So the user is still the most, they say the weakest link, because once you attack the user, whether it be emotionally or socially or however it is, once that's done, there's no amount of tech you can put around that user to make it safe. So I'd say ID is super important, because once you understand that the ID is the keys to the castle, they attack the user, and if the user has the keys, you're done, right? So educating your users is super important. Putting those wrappers around that is super important. But to answer your question, I think my mate who's the CTO, Craig Dorr at RSA, says it the best. Business still have so much apathy towards cybersecurity that they need to actually bring it to the forefront to go, you know what, apathy will not get us protected. You need to start understanding what it is that protects your business and get your users protected. And of course, protect your infrastructure, and all those things we normally do. But it has to be so much deeper now. The compliance to protect people and the breaches that we needs to have better thought and governance. I think that's the main part I like to talk about when I talk about cybersecurity, because everyone talks about the tech. It's not about the tech. It's about your understanding of what it does for your business. Yeah. But yes, you think about it, the lowest common denominator was always easy. Get a fob, you're secure. That's great. Keys are done, right? But it's so much more than that. And you'd know, you'd probably advise partners or customers about this as well. It's way more than that. Where's your data going? Where you're sending it? What privacy data that you're sharing that you shouldn't be sharing? Data loss prevention. All these lovely things we touch on. But yes, it does start with the keys to the castle. If you can't even get that right, you're in lots of trouble.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's educating, and that's why we do exactly what we're doing now, is to educate people in regards to, I think there's a lot in the industry. It's, this scary thing's happening, and that's all very valid, right? It's all happening. Like, I probably say it nearly every second podcast or every second conversation. The many banks and what have you get, they have to come out to the market and advise of these breaches. But the average small SME, even private enterprise that is relatively big, if they get hacked, they're not screaming from the rooftops unless they have to. So you don't go out and tell all your customers unless you have to. And it is happening. It's happening an enormous amount. So it's really about education and the things that we're going to do, that we're doing. Talk to us about some of the other vendors, who they are, what they do, and how it's sort of in a layman's term,
Sure.
the product.
Cloudflare, making the internet a safer place. So I'll start with saying that their strength is, I think, about 25 to 30% of all internet traffic goes through their systems. So it's probably safe to say they probably see every threat. And so what they do is they use that analytics to sort of do their profiling what traffic is useful and important, and they provide DDoS protection. So if you've got a website out there today,
yep.
What are you using to stop people hacking your website, right? It's fairly basic. They haven't got free tier stuff they don't like me talking about, but you can protect it with the free stuff. The only difference is, and what partners will, I won't use that, it's free, is that for you to actually be fully protected, you've got to step up to the pro versions. From a logs perspective, from a, I'll give you the what happened in that breach and I can report back. So they're about protecting everybody, and that's why they have that free tier, particularly around students. I mean, if you want to go protect you put your DNS as 1.1.1.1, and you're using their DNS, so they know which areas you shouldn't go and things of that nature. So, and then what they're getting into is email protection as well. They've probably seen every email, every source address that's not good, and they stop that from happening as well. They also do zero trust network access, because, knowing where the traffic comes from. They do web application security. So if you're in that space of websites and making apps work, that's where you see the click here if you're not a robot, and, all those lovely things you see. They also do zero trust as well. So the whole...
Yeah, talk us through this. This is a really interesting space, because I think the average person can relate to what you will explain zero trust. So talk us through that. I mean, it's a very interesting space, this.
Oh my goodness. It's fraught with danger, this question, because everyone has a different version of what zero trust is, right?
Well, true. But in the definition of, what Cloudflare are doing.
Oh, look, it's about locking all the doors and not actually giving anyone access unless they're privileged to it as well. So,
Hang on.
And it's that simple. If you don't need access, you shouldn't get access. I need to know every step you go through my network, are you the right person, and do you have rights, right? And everyone thinks that's complex, and it can be if you make it really. I remember back in the Windows NTFS days where you're doing ACLs and DACLs. Think about that, but really quick and really simple. That's what zero trust should be. And then you add a layer of AI on top of it, which, the system does use, life becomes much easier. So however people want to do SASE or ZTNA, which you can't buy off the shelf, it has to be designed to how you want it. And I think that's the main part about this as well. Make sure you know who's accessing what, where, and how, make sure it's secured, make sure, all your doors are locked. I think that's very basic. I'm going to get absolutely grilled.
No, it's very good. No, because this is going out to an audience that is, some very technical and some not. Talk us through also, you look at a product like RSA, actually, and we'll get to your third vendor. But those two vendors, Cloudflare and RSA, these are not products. I mean, you can certainly go to their websites and buy direct and all sorts of things, if you're an end user. But the average it's so important for partners to develop the right solutions, the right product, and then the implementation and the ongoing management. These are not sort of, pricing, purchase 100 seats, next, complete. Oh, protected. There is so much more to this. You wouldn't even know where to start, to begin with. But this is really where the partners come into play, isn't it?
100%. I think there was a stat, I can't remember what it was. I think it was like 30% of every customer who buys, I think it's Microsoft or one of the products, will have a churn rate away from the tech if there wasn't a partner involved. And that's because it's cheaper to buy it direct sometimes, right? Because you don't have the management and all those things. But the problem is you use maybe 10% of the product and you don't actually deploy it or use it correctly. And that's where the partner comes in. So important. And I think I'll say this, in Australia and New Zealand even, MSPs are the king of this game when it comes to SMB and mid-market. You're coming in and going, okay, this is the product from Microsoft, whoever, and I'm going to put a wrapper around the management so that and you get the best value out of the product. And I think that's so important. You touch on something, everyone goes, I want to sell the big lumpy deals. Great, the license goes, but what is the upsell and what value are you providing to that process? Now, MSPs sort of understand that and say, like, I'm going to stick with, 3 products I know really well, but what I do with it is I maximize the customer's return on that spend on that license and my services. And I think that's super important.
And how they interact with other platforms and what have you. I mean, we see it all the time, Tony, is that we come to, particularly in the mid-market and the enterprise space, we have a customer come to us and I don't want to sort of diss on internal IT teams too much, but they're being hammered, from all directions. They don't have the exposure level often to the tech in terms of how this this platform interacts with that platform, and we see all too often right from an organisation that doesn't have an internal IT team. They bought a product like Cloudflare. I've got an example. I won't name names. They bought a product, think that they're doing all the wonderful things in the world for us to determine in our onboarding process and auditing process that it's not protecting anything. They've got a subscription that it's not attached to absolutely anything in terms of DNS or what have you, and it's producing nothing and paying big money for it, right through to internal IT teams that are probably only leveraging 20, 30, 40% of the platform and paying full tilt.
100%.
So, that's where we can add value, is that we've got the specialists to go in. And again, I really, in terms of the circle of competence, not always do we have the full circle of competence. So we lean upon, the pre-sales engineers and the technical expertise at Dicker to deploy these products.
Absolutely. And one of those things, talking to a partner as sophisticated yourself who sees a lot of these things, I think your learning process of what a product does is consistent. Like, you're always going, what else can I do? Because once I learn that, I can scale my investment in my people, right? Your help desk, your engineers, to sort of go, okay, can I lean on that as a tenant product to go somewhere else? Because then you're scaling properly and you have those skills. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting to see.
Yeah. Third vendor, you look after 3, I understand it. Third vendor?
Nutanix.
Who are they? What do they do?
Nutanix, Hyper-Converged infrastructure. So, they take the networking, the storage and compute, and they put it in a nice box so that, it's modular and it just takes away the complexity of those 3-tier architectures we had in the past. So if you wanted to do that, that's really a very good way to go about it. If you need more capacity or more, you just get another module and you just stick it on and it just roams over that hyper-converged infrastructure. I'm oversimplifying it, but I think people have found it much simpler to deploy those types of infrastructure for workloads. And also because Nutanix have their own hypervisor as well that manages that. It's working really well, and there's been change in that market a fair bit over the last 12 months.
Wow.
And it's, and
it's
not
a
dumping
hot
anyone here,
area,
but
isn't it?
it's been we've had more sizing and more quotes to change the hypervisor in the last 12 months than we've probably seen ever.
And these are not these decisions, Tony, are not, for the person that doesn't know what all this hyper-converged and hypervisors are. We're talking about the core infrastructure. The vendor that is running this core infrastructure in really, really simple terms. And there's been a key player in that market that essentially removed themselves from the small and mid and even some enterprise space in VMware with the purchase from Broadcom, and that's a direction, and that's completely fine. But these are not decisions where you sort of go, oh, we'll just do that next week.
Oh, no.
These are massive decisions.
Oh, no. And a lot of these
big
ones...
change in the market.
Because virtualization has allowed us to get to cloud, if you really think about it, right? If you think about the birth of cloud is the hypervisor and actually squeezing as much compute into unused processing, right? If you really think about it. Now people using that and going, oh, I want to go to cloud, Azure, Google, Amazon, whatever, but I want to control my performance and I want to control my costs, so they still own some hypervisor that's run on their own infrastructure. If you really think about that, that's cost benefit of what you do and control. And so therefore, we've had this whole movement into everyone moving to Azure, going, that's really good for bursty stuff, but you know what, for compliance or privacy purposes, I want to keep my own. And that's why, VMware's done an amazing job. If you think about it, they did a lot of this as well, but like anything investment, decisions are made, and we have to work around what's available to us as a channel and what we can do, and you look at options.
Tell me, we sort of, from the top of the conversation, everything old is new again. We're seeing a real move from organisations that have gone full cloud in the last 5 years, as you hit the nail on the head, back to in terms of some of that really consistent workload for organisations back into either private data centres, or for some smaller organisations they literally bring it back on premise, or into the service offerings that we provide, to bring that cost, lineal cost, so they know what it is, work month in, month out. Are you seeing that as well? Because we're seeing a big shift towards that and going, hold on a minute, we put these workloads into the cloud, the cost went through the roof. And you're rightly so, that was a big trend, and still is a big trend into cloud for these workloads that are needed. And in layman's terms, you might need huge server and workload capacity for 1 month of the year. So often with people like councils, bigger manufacturing, where they really need to scale up for a period of time. But for a lot of organisations that have this consistency, public cloud, what we refer to. So when we say public cloud, the likes of AWS, Amazon, which is Amazon, Azure, Microsoft, and Google, we're seeing a big shift back the other way for all or parts. What's your thoughts?
I have varying thoughts, and I try not to offend everybody as I give them.
No, you've got to walk the.
I'm not talking about my partner, some of my partners who are MVPs, and with regards to Microsoft, and I'll say this for infrastructure as well. When you move things to cloud, and the good thing about cloud is that it's bursty. If you put the right automations in, when it's bursty, you can get that goodness where you get really big. But when it's not, you can actually bring it down to next to nothing when you don't need it, right? So that comes down to automation, understanding the trends of how people are using, and et cetera, et cetera. And the same thing I would say about on-prem infrastructure. You do have to spend a lot at the beginning, but if you understand your automations and what you can bring, you can actually not burst per se, but use less, or use more on-prem workloads from the cloud if you wanted to. This whole cloud mobility is a thing. So what I say is, I see a lot of people moving it back because they're saying, oh, they're so expensive in the cloud. But I think what they forget is sometimes their analysis is like, not putting their electrical costs in. They're not going, okay, if my building burnt down, what was I going to do? Do I need two infrastructure in a different place, right? And so we see, depending on what the end customer wants, is what the partner is doing. If they're not an MSP, so the MSP, they're usually guaranteeing certain SLAs and whatever. But a lot of big end customers, that they get, I would like this feature in cloud because it's now PaaS, so I can save money. And we're seeing, that happen. But we're going, okay, but I've got these workloads. They might be new or legacy, but I want to control how much I want to perform. I'm going to bring it back inside. So there is a cost factor, there is a risk factor, but it's also, what does the strategic direction of the end customer want to do, and how strong is the stakeholder management in there, and how the partner like yourself can go in there and say, well, we can sate that sort of appetite for risk doing XYZ. So the partner has a big say in it as well. So I know it's a non-answer per se, and it's quite politically correct.
No, but it's
sort of what I'm saying.
There's more to it. The reason why I bring it up is there's more to this argument per se than just one's better than the other.
100%.
And that's what we see. If someone we talk to a lot of people about moving data sets and load between these things, and some people that have got a real they're hellbound on cloud, they get advice on that, and obviously they're receiving advice on that. And then there's a number of, as you say, there's cost, there's risk, there's time frame's a big one in the thing. In this, we're seeing a lot of organizations that have got a workload and they've only got a short period before it's phased out to a SaaS platform. Cloud's great for that. I mean, we could talk for a long period of time on the pros and cons.
Can you imagine someone goes, I want to see a proof of concept. No one's going to spend $100,000 to put infrastructure in the data center. Like, let's try it on the cloud. We'll spike it up for a month. Let's run a POC. Amazing, right? You couldn't do that with infrastructure unless the MSP has some, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's fantastic. Talk us through. So, in terms of what you do day to day, we've sort of spoken about all that stuff, but I'd encourage people to have a look at your LinkedIn profile, Tony Lamb, LAM. Seriously impressive. We touched on the videos. They're really, you get great engagement, and rightly so, because people are deriving a lot of use out of them. They're getting the information they need, the updates they want. How long have you been doing that for, mate?
10 years, mate, to the day. Like,
serious.
So everyone goes, well, aren't you a sales guy business? Yes, I think when I was the technical cloud lead for Dicker Data back in the day, no one was actually making content. In fact, no one was making content. And so my first one was probably one of the worst. I can't even watch it anymore. It was about how Microsoft Splunk can be good for you. And I'll watch it now. I'm like, oh my goodness, the most driest subject humanly possible. But yeah, it's been one of those things. Everyone goes, oh, you're a marketing guy. I'm like, no, not really. I'm just a guy who likes telling stories or being valuable in my storytelling. I think that's the main
being
part.
Valuable. Adding value.
And you've noticed I'm trying to drag a lot of my people through that as well, because it's a journey. Like, people not very comfortable. I mean, you obviously have done a bit more, so you're fairly confident in your questioning and how we converse. So that we didn't get here in day one. You know what I mean? So my main thing for everybody is content's king, and don't allow the what I call the vanity status of your likes and comments to stop you from doing what you're doing online. And I say this because, that last video where I was talking and Charles was ended, it's only got I don't know, 60 likes, 1,000 views, but I've got over 10 hours of watching that video.
Well, this is interesting you mentioned this, Tony, because we, in my world, I wouldn't say blow up, but, you always have content that goes much better than others, and I can't work it out. Who knows? It might be the content. It might be the algorithm within the algorithm who sees it. But I am constantly amazed at whether it's Instagram or we do a little bit on Instagram, but particularly LinkedIn. We can have something that has had bugger all views, and I'll give you a little story. I was walking the other day, and I was up the back in a little bit of foresty area. I do one of my runs/walks, and this guy pulls me up and he says, "I know you." And I said, all right. I'm sorry, mate. I've never met you before. He said, yeah, I've seen you on LinkedIn about, X, Y, and Z video. I'm like, all right, that was one of our lowest. I thought it didn't gain any traction at all. This guy, he said, yeah, I work for an engineering company in Brisbane and yada, yada, yada. So it's amazing the reach, isn't it? Which is converted into actually us having a potential chat in regards to what they're doing. And it's incredible the reach, isn't it? Have you found that?
The reach is amazing, and depending, well, there's certain things I do, like, is it geographically someone you tag in? Is it an exec that has certain comments you want to do, and that creates a certain flurry of traffic as well. And but man, I've been doing this for so long. Everywhere I go, like, how you doing? So I'm like, I've not met you, but I'm sure I have. I don't want to be rude, but yes, I do get it all the time, even from non-IT people. I'm walking down like, hey, I've seen your stuff. I'm like, yeah, probably, but you know what? The main thing is if you're having fun doing it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, you're connecting with people. I think it's a great. From this conversation, we don't use some of those vendors, and we're going to extend this conversation out to that, because I'm, my mind's ticking over about, we've got this to do and that to do. That vendor's going to be handy. I'm going to reach out to you, post this. It's just from that perspective, it's amazing, and it's increased my network, not just from a corny LinkedIn connections and likes, and that's all sort of fair bit of dribble in my
vanity
opinion,
stats. Vanity stats.
Yeah. It's a waste of time, but it's how it brings value to people, and the connections you bring off that. I was at a conference in Bali at the end of last year, and again, didn't even know the person. It actually happened 3 times, but we've since discussed and collaborated on a number of things into tangible, work, which has been fantastic, mate. You're doing a stellar job. Congratulations on your journey, and of course, Dicker Data. I'd encourage people that don't know Dicker Data out there, and to look up the company. And as I said, if you're a keen investor, they've had an amazing journey led by a founder-led company. There's a really interesting chap, isn't he? He's
mate, racing cars, designing stuff in cars for F1 vehicles. It's just an amazing story, absolute out of this world story.
Truly, yeah. So look that up. Good luck on your journey in 2025. Thanks for coming on. Looking forward to seeing the content. LinkedIn's we call it some of it corny, but LinkedIn's really the best way to get in contact with you, Tony, if you want to watch some of this content.
Oh, mate, LinkedIn. I don't usually use YouTube, but I think that's going to start becoming a thing as well. But LinkedIn is where I think most of my B2B partners make contact with me as well. So it's
valuable content. So I really encourage people that you're going to get valuable insight. So look Tony up, Tony Lam, LAM, and much appreciated. And we'll chat soon. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, buddy. Speak to you soon.
Thanks.